Congressman, for 30 years, you've warned of global government reading their own documents. I have the Danish text leaked of the treaty calling for global governance, a global authority over all air travel over the oceans, 2% tax, flat tax on all GDPs paid to the IMF and World Bank, effectively abolishing the UN's power. The UN is freaking out. Private, corporate, global governance. Congressman, there's no longer any denial about this, is there?
No way, and in a way it may serve to our benefit because the people are going to wake up just as our federal government fails. You know, we hear more about nullification and secession, and I figure that when the federal government fails or the money fails, there's going to be a lot of independence declared. So even though they're bold and they're making these plans, they're not going to be effective, and it may serve our purpose in waking up the people. But they've been pushing this for a good many years. But, 20 years ago, approximately, when, the Soviet system collapsed, they quit using the word socialism, but they shifted over toward this environmental effort, claiming that they could get government control through this. And they have done an amazing job in infiltrating our public school system and indoctrinating our young kids going home and talking and yelling at their parents and for environmental things and pollution and all this. So they have invaded us, but hopefully we can survive and be motivated enough to counteract these efforts and make it clear that world government is to no one's benefit except those who get to govern the others.
I've interviewed literally hundreds of reporters that have been at these different globalist summits, including 5 or 6 the last few days at Copenhagen, and they say that there's a sense of desperation and panic by the big banks predominantly that are funding this private corporate global government. Sir, do you agree with me, or perhaps you can elaborate on the fact that now that they've been revealed, because we did our job in the face of ridicule and exposed their global government plan, that now because they've been exposed, they're coming out in the open and being more bold and honest about it? I mean, what's your take on why they're so bold?
Well, I think that could be it. They have to be more aggressive. But in many ways, though, people are backing off from this because there, some major candidates had been, supporters of cap and trade, and have taken their names off the bill. So they're starting to understand this. Same way with, audit the Fed thing. Just look how the establishment come down hard, and Bernanke hiring lobbyists and him writing editorials. It hasn't seemed to help their side. They're still on the defensive. But we are in a struggle. There is no doubt, and they are going to get tougher. And right now, too many of them have too much power in different governments. And if they take this next step that they can exert power with a world government and a world military, which is partially here already, then we're in very big trouble. But I tend to want to be more optimistic, thinking that the people will wake up, and we have the tools, still of the radio. Hopefully that'll last, and still we have the internet. Hopefully that'll last, but they're capable of closing us down. So it is vital that we wake up as many people as possible, as quickly as possible.
Congressman, you brought up the fact that the Senate is now saying they're probably not going to ratify the treaty, even if Obama signs it. That may be a red herring to make us stand down, but then it looks like it may be real because, as you know, Obama 2 days ago was in the Associated Press, headline, Obama threatens command and control and tells Congress, the real boss in our system of government, the three pillars of government, legislative, executive, judicial, saying, I don't care if you don't pass this. The EPA is going to implement this by executive fiat.
Yeah, and that goes to show what they can do, on the system that we've allowed to be created. The executive branch has tremendous powers, and the courts won't help us. They write regulations. They have the force of law. And it reminds me of that statement, stroke of the pen, law of the land, kind of cool. And that's how powerful presidents are. They write executive orders, they write signing statements, and they do what they want. And this is why the movement is getting very, very disgusted and saying, they keep talking about nullification and secession, and that growth is going to continue.
Congressman, is it not an impeachable offense to have the White House telling Congress, if you don't ratify a treaty, handing our control over to the IMF and World Bank, now in the treaty, for all of these unlimited taxes? They say they have the power to just raise any taxes they want, selectively enforce regulations to the benefit of that inner coterie of global robber barons. I mean, is this not an impeachable offense if Obama attempts to supersede the will of the Congress?
Well, it certainly deserves a lot of attention. I don't know whether it's going to be put in that category. It's not going to happen because they've been doing it for so long. It means that, everybody in the Congress is guilty. Everybody in the executive branch is guilty, and just about everybody in the judicial system is guilty. So that's not going to happen, and I guess to many of it is a high crime, and it should be looked at. But that's not going to happen. That's not. I mean, we have to just change the understanding by more and more people on what we have to replace what we have right now with.
Well, how do we block it then? How do we block a president acting as a dictator under Presidential Decision Directive 51 and others, saying, I'll do whatever I want. I'll hand America over to the United Nations and IMF and World Bank?
Well, if they get to that point where, it's literally so, right now they would argue the case against that, but, I think that subtly we're moving in that direction. But this would all stop if we had the right numbers. This Congress would be eliminated, and we'd have different people here, and they would be passing legislation. And then if the public was, on our side, then the president couldn't do it just because of public pressure. The president isn't going to march next weekend and take your gun. He might like to, and he might be moving in that direction, but he's not going to do it. There's a limit. Public opinion is not going to let that happen. So public opinion is what really, really counts and puts up the resistance, to what they're doing. And we're moving in that direction, and it's much better. But it won't be a technical matter of throwing the president out for this. They're just not the mentality here in Washington isn't even considering anything like that. The American people have to change the nature of Congress before anything else will happen.
But you do sound optimistic. I mean, I'm seeing a giant awakening that just continues to mushroom and accelerate exponentially. Are you seeing the same thing from your position, sir?
Oh, yeah. I think this every time I go out, I get more encouraged. And, I do go to the campus and talk to young people because I think that's so crucial. And I think real revolutions occur with young people. So I see it not only with college kids, but even kids younger that are getting interested in their reading. They're so far ahead of what I was thinking about when I was in college. I was doing pre-med, and, that's what I was concentrating on. But now I have a lot of college kids and high school kids coming in, and they're intensely interested in this. They're interested in the Federal Reserve, and they're studying, and they're reading Austrian economics. And so their numbers are growing, and that's what we have to encourage, because I see it as an ideological struggle rather than a political struggle. The political stuff comes if you convince enough people that it's in their best interest to get rid of big government, and get rid of the monetary system.
Absolutely, that's the source.
Foreign policy. So it's an ideological struggle. That to me is the most important thing.
Absolutely, and so we are starting to gain ground on that front. Lastly, on the environment front, China is saying they will support the Copenhagen establishment of world government if a global government, and this is out of China Daily, will carry out one-child policies in the West. And we have the National Post calling for that. The good news is there are hundreds of comments on this National Post article out of Canada. Not one of them is in support of these Malthusian control freak views. But from my studies, Congressman, at the heart of the global government is a control freak wish to establish a neo-Malthusian eugenics system on the planet. Can you comment on the call?
I think the radical environmentalists would go along with that, but they're in a small minority. They're losing credibility. American people aren't going to buy into this, so I think it's fine for them to make those announcements, because I think that's awakening. That will serve to awaken the people. Because that is so extreme and so radical and so un-American. If we don't wake up, then it's our own darn fault. If we
Absolutely.
hear that kind of talk and then go ahead and sign these treaties and then find out there's a world government trying to enforce these things, I mean, there are movements for world governments to regulate guns and everything else. So, I mean, if we get that far, you know, we almost deserve it if we're so stupid as not to wake up and do something about it.
Well, Congressman Ron Paul is our guest. We have the full text of the treaty and the Danish addendum. It states that it is a global government, a regulatory system over all air traffic, 2% tax on all the GDP off the top, huge taxes on fuels, taxes on meat, taxes on methane, taxes on light bulbs, television sets, Freon. I mean, this is tens of trillions of dollars a year to the IMF and World Bank.
Yeah, that's grandiose. I just don't think it's going to happen because the people will rebel. And that will be a tremendous boost to the underground economy. You know, they're just not going to do it. Now, I think the underground economy is growing all the time. Our own government does it to us. Our own local governments do these things to us. There's too much regulation, too much taxation, too much abuse of our freedoms, and people are so sick and tired of it. If all of a sudden they see on some bill someplace that their taxes are going up to pay for world government,